Hello everyone, I'm Santiago, and today I'm gonna be testing the Bioshock Trilogy on the GeForce GT 1030. For FPS monitoring, I'll be using CAM. If you want to download this software, there's a link down in the description. And if you want to support me, there are Humble and Amazon affiliate links down in the description as well. So the Bioshock Trilogy, I'll talk about each specific game when it starts on the video, so you can skip to any of the games you're interested in down in the description. We're going to be testing Bioshock 1, 2 and Infinite, which are the Bioshock games available on PC. So well, first of all, as you can see on screen, we're just testing Bioshock 1, the remaster. So as the title suggests, this is the remastered version of the first game. It doesn't add that much, but I saw that they removed a couple options that were present in the non-remastered version, which is a bummer. But well, on Bioshock 1 we're doing 1080p, you might be asking yourself why. Because you'll see that the game goes over 100 frames per second sometimes, so you might ask yourself why I'm not testing 1440p. Well, when you're fighting in this game with many enemies at once, in this video you'll see that I'm fighting with some splicers using a shotgun, plus lighting attacks and all that kind of stuff. And well, when that happens, the frame rate will drop into the low 60s. So if I do 1440p, I get drops into the 40s. So if you don't mind about that, just do 1440p, but the objective here was to try it to be at 60 frames per second or over that as much as possible. So yeah, that's the thing with Bioshock 1, it's over 80 frames per second a long time, but once you go into a fight, it can drop as low as 60 frames per second, so that's definitely something to keep in mind. I would really just cap this game at 70 frames per second and play it like that, so the frame rate is not that uneven. Because you're just exploring and it's 100 frames per second, you get into a fight and it suddenly drops to 60 or 70, so that's just my opinion. So yeah, that's Bioshock 1. I'm going to talk to you again on Bioshock 2. Okay, so now we're testing Bioshock 2 Remastered. Again, the remastered version of Bioshock 2. The non-remastered version, in my case, crashed a lot back then. It was kind of unplayable because you go into a loading screen and the game randomly crashes, so you lose a lot of progress. This time around it ran fine, I didn't run into any crashing like in the past, which is good. It has very similar options to Bioshock 1 Remastered, and it also runs very similarly. When you're fighting, you get drops into the 60s sometimes. It depends on how you're fighting. If you're using lightning attacks or a gun or something like that, the amount of enemies on screen also matters. So again, I will cap it at 70 frames per second, so the frame rates are not that uneven, because if not, you'll be like 100 frames per second when exploring, then suddenly drop below 80 frames per second when you're fighting. So that's my recommendation there. And again, 1440p can drop below 60 frames per second very easily, but just stay over 30 frames per second. I'm going to talk to you about it again once we jump into Bioshock Infinite.
This is Dr. Sophia Lamb with a message for the people. Remember, Big Sister is always watching. To steal Adam is to steal from the Rapture family. Your family. You to fight her. Careful, security cameras belong to Lamb. But if you are clever, they can be made to serve you.
Hey, we were just getting started! Don't go! Stand up for me! Topside now, highballing with all the can-cans.
And finally we got Bioshock Infinite, and this one will be tested on 1080p and 900p. Again, the objective was to get 60 frames per second as much as possible, so on 1080p I'm going to be using a mix between medium and high. Textures will be on ultra, anti-aliasing turned off, dynamic shadows will be dropped to high, post-processing will be kept on normal because alternate post-processing usually runs worse. I'll lower ambient occlusion from ultra to normal, and the object level of detail will be dropped to high. And that was enough to be at 60 frames per second pretty much all the time. You might see some drops into the 50s sometimes when there's a big fight going on. A lot of shooting, some fire on screen, it depends on the powers you use. And then when I switch to 900p, you'll see that I'm using almost the highest settings. In order to get 60s there, I just dropped dynamic shadows from ultra to very high, and that was enough to be pretty much at 60 frames per second. If you still want a small improvement in performance, just lower ambient occlusion from ultra to high, and that should give you a small increase in the frame rate. Anyway guys, that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I highly recommend these games, especially Bioshock 1. That's my favorite on the series. You can usually get these 3 games very cheap on Steam sales and all that kind of stuff, so keep an eye on that. But yeah, see you guys next time.
Gentlemen, the false shepherd is loose in the streets of our city. Will you suffer the shame to fall prey to his machinations? Or will you act for your women folk, act for your profit,
Sacrifice for our sons.
not in panic, but in prayer.
Blood must not be shed.
What do you...
Tim, the one they're after. Go. They're looking for you.
Police, we're in need of your assistance.
They're here!
Ah! What's that? Gunshot! Inside! Inside!
Keep it down! Keep him pinned! Cover me! I'm reloading!
Kill you.
Gentlemen, the false shepherd is loose in the streets of our fair city. Will you suffer the shame of allowing your wives and your daughters to fall prey to his machinations? Or will you act for your women folk, act for your profit, act.